I have started to speak French with AI. And at first, I've got to say, I was very skeptical. But it enabled me to get French out of my mouth for the first time in over a decade. And it was a really emotional experience, actually. Hello and welcome back to the StoryLearning podcast. Great to have you here. And I'm going to open with a question for you today. If you have learned languages at all in the last week or two, have you used AI at all? Has AI featured at all in your practice? Anything at all, from an app to software to just firing up ChatGPT? I'm very curious because what's happened with AI is that it has landed like a rock in a pond in the last couple of years. And like with many things worldwide, it is upending the way we learn languages. And for me personally, I'm finding that AI more and more is part of my language routine. And so this leads to our question for today, which comes from Rob W, 1983. And Rob asks, can ChatGPT be a replacement for real people? He says, I don't know any German folk these days. So presumably Rob is learning German. And I'm going to guess from his question that he used to either live in Germany or used to have some German friends. And at that time he learned German. But then life moves on and your German friends are no longer around. They're not living next to you. You're not living in Berlin anymore or whatever. And you don't have anyone to practice with. And then AI comes along and now suddenly you have a way to practice anytime that you want. This is something that I can relate to a lot. I live in the English countryside, and if you know my history, I've lived all around the world. So I lived in Argentina, in Brazil, in Japan, in Qatar, in Egypt, even Paris. I forgot Paris. How could I possibly forget Paris? And in all of these places, I learned the languages. That was my main motivation for learning the languages. And as I always say, I never learned languages for the sake of learning the languages themselves. I don't particularly enjoy studying as such. What I enjoy is connecting with real people. So when I was living in France, I learned French because I wanted to connect with French people. Same in Japan. I didn't learn Japanese out of intellectual challenge. I just wanted to learn to speak with Japanese people. But now living where I do, there's nothing but English for miles around. There's a smattering of Hindi, a smattering of Polish, but it's few and far between. And so for many of my languages, I really have struggled to keep them up in recent years. And the only option for me to keep up a language like Japanese, really, because there ain't no Japanese people around where I live, is either to travel to Japan, which I do from time to time, or it's to book tutors on an online website, which I've also done from time to time. But both of these are really quite inconvenient. Traveling to Japan is not something you can do every day or even every year. And then as great as it is to be able to go on a website like LanguaTalk and find a tutor and connect with that tutor, there are certain drawbacks. Number one, it is expensive to do it a lot. And number two, if you're busy like me, then you don't really like to schedule in all these things all the time because it can be difficult to find the time. As a result, on a practical level, when it comes to maintaining languages for me, I'll be honest, I've kind of struggled. And so I have found myself using AI tools. So we'll come to that in a minute. My fundamental starting point is with language learning and technology in general, I have always been a bit of a skeptic, and I kind of remain a skeptic in the sense that there is, in my opinion, very little technology that actually changes the fundamental dynamics of language learning. For me, it's not just a question of efficiency of learning vocabulary with flashcard apps or whatever. It's not about that. Language learning is a holistic thing. We learn languages in order to connect with people, to bring the world closer together, to improve our lives. It's not just a question of memorizing a bunch of stuff or cramming things. To be able to sit down and read a book, it's the experience that you get from that. It's like a life that, if you compare two people, one person reads, one person doesn't. Who leads the better life? It's the person who reads because they're just more aware. They think more. They have broader experiences. And so it's exactly the same thing with languages. We want to integrate languages into our lives in multiple different ways. Technology does relatively little to actually help you improve that. So much of learning a language comes from depth of focus. It comes down to sitting for an hour or two with a book and struggling through it, realizing you can't understand it, having to do mental gymnastics to try and find this is the way that languages are learned. And so whenever I've come across a new app or something, I've tried out so many apps, and I end up just deleting them after 5 minutes because they just do nothing for me. They're usually just a way to kind of speed up rote memorization through algorithms. And there are some apps and there's some technology that I have really used and really enjoyed. Flashcard apps, for example, I quite like. If you use them properly, I think they can be very powerful. I'm a huge fan of tools like Link from my friend Steve Kaufman. Link is great because fundamentally what it does is it encourages reading and listening, which is obviously at the core of the story learning method. And it uses technology to help you just elevate that by having very simple one-click definitions of words, for example, or saving your words to access later. But even when I'm using something like Link, the reason I'm using it is simply to facilitate reading. I'm trying to make reading easier. And so you've always got to contend with the question, can I not, or should I not just be sitting down and reading in the first place? So now let's get on to talking about AI itself, how to use that with language learning. But first, if you would like some simple tips for integrating AI into your language learning, for figuring out the right way to use AI to help you learn faster, I've got a free guide that shows you study plans to integrate AI into your sessions, different ways to use AI, which are not just the chatbots themselves, and ideas for goal setting and stuff like that. It's completely free. You can click the link in the description to get that. So I think in my view, there have been probably 3 major shifts in technology and language learning. The first was when the internet came along and you went from having to go to your local library to get content in a language to be able to look up a French newspaper online, for example, and read today's headlines in French. So the internet gave us access to content, which was a big game changer. Then you had software. Like I say, most software I think is totally inconsequential, but there is some software that is useful. Flashcard apps, for example. We can't ignore something like Duolingo, which has millions and millions of users. So that's that. I mean, I would argue that didn't really change the fundamentals of language learning. But when AI came along, this has, I think, for the first time since the beginning of the internet, actually fundamentally changed the way that languages can be learned. And the reason is that even, as skeptical as I might be about technology, as much as I'm going to push reading and listening as the core foundation, if you want to get good at a language, if you want to learn to speak a language fluently, then sooner or later, you are going to have to speak that language a lot. And that sounds obvious, but the way that you get better at speaking is not by studying. You have to do the studying, but the way that you actually develop a facility in speaking is by getting a lot of reps in, getting a lot of airtime, actually doing the speaking. Fluency is a consequence of speaking. And so that's where you have the problems like Rob's question and like my example living here in the countryside and not being able to find people to practice with, and then having to settle for expensive online tutoring at inconvenient times or scheduled in advance. And that's where the problems come in. And so the big thing that AI has done is it has allowed us, has enabled us for the very first time to be able to, at any point, simply open up an app or open up your computer and to start to speak your language. Now, you can do this on ChatGPT. I mean, most people that I know would say that ChatGPT is not a particularly effective way of doing it because it's just, you can't really control the experience very much. This is why you have so many AI chatbots or AI chat software that's been emerging. 2 that I'm involved in particular are Langua and Teacher AI. I'll put those in the description below. And what these 2 apps do is they facilitate speaking practice, but so much of the work behind the scenes there goes into actually making it so that the interaction with the tutor or the interaction with the AI is natural and feels like a natural conversation. Because this is really the holy grail here. If you can open up an AI and you can speak to it in French and it can respond to you in French and it can correct your mistakes and all of this, and it can feel like a natural human experience, which it already does, especially with software like Langua and Teacher AI, then now it's, from a personal point of view, it's something that you actually want to do. And so it allows you to simulate this real world conversation in a pretty amazing way. And the big thing that this does is it allows you to do it at a time that suits you without any additional cost. So a while ago, I started using the software I mentioned to practice some French because I learned French when I was 19 years old living in Paris. This was a long time ago, 25 years ago. And I really haven't spoken much French since. until recently when I have started to speak French with AI. And at first, I've got to say, I was very skeptical. And, speaking with an AI isn't perfect. And if you've tried it, you'll know that often it kind of asks an annoying number of questions. And obviously it lacks the kind of empathetic human responses, right? But what it did was it enabled me to get French out of my mouth for the first time in over a decade. And it's not even a question of having a perfect conversation. It's more that I realized, man, I haven't even used these French muscles in my mouth. I haven't used my mouth to make these French sounds for so long. And now I'm doing it. And I'm doing it for 5 minutes and 10 minutes and 15 minutes. And now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days in a row. It's like, wow, I'm actually speaking French. And it was a really emotional experience, actually, because I just hadn't done it. And I suppose at any point, you could say, well, oh, you could just go to Paris or you could just take lessons online. It's like, yeah, I know. But I don't, because I've got a million other things to do and multiple other languages as well. And so, as with so many things in life, it just ends up not happening. And so the really big thing, and the reason this is a game changer, is because it enables speaking for the first time. Everyone who teaches languages online, businesses like StoryLearning, or any of my friends who have language YouTube channels, we make courses and we write books. But the big thing that we have never been able to really help people with is speaking practice, right? So unless we actually offer regular speaking classes, we can help you with everything, but not the speaking part. The thing that AI does is it just solves that. It adds that on. And so I really don't think of it as replacing anything in language learning. But rather it's an addition. It's a new tool. It's supplementary. It augments the way that we already learn. Because as you all know, if you spent any time with AI speaking your language, it doesn't replace human interaction, right? I could spend all day speaking with an AI. I'm still going to want to see an actual person at the end of the day, speak to a real person. And the thing that AI doesn't give you is this ability to read people. So much of communication in a language is about body language. It's about listening skills. It's about human interaction, empathy, and all of these things. And you don't get any of that with AI. So it gives you the ability to practice, but it doesn't replace anything. I think for people who suffer with social anxiety of some kind, it's a pretty big deal, this actually, because many people never get started speaking their new language precisely because of fear of making mistakes or nerves and anxiety about speaking a language that they might not be very confident at in front of another person. The gift that AI gives you to be able to just practice, just get the reps in without having to worry about nerves or anxiety is a really, really big deal. As skeptical as I was when AI first came out, I'm a fan, and I think it's incredible. And of course, it's not just the speaking with the chatbots; it is all the other things that you can do as well, especially the personalized nature of language learning. So if you use a tool like Langua, for example, you can be speaking with the chatbot, and you have all the tools there, like instant translation and corrections. But what you can also do is save and store vocabulary that you like. You click on a word and save it, and then you can use the AI to quiz you on that vocabulary or write a story based on that vocabulary. Right? So there's all these extra things you can do, and it amounts to personalized learning. So it really is amazing. And the future of AI, I mean, it's anybody's guess. Broadly in the world of AI, there are two schools of thought. One school of thought is that it's going to continue to improve exponentially, end up having super intelligence and then take over the world. The other school of thought is that AI capabilities are going to cap out or have already capped out in some way. And so we're just going to end up bumping up against a ceiling where AI is no longer able to improve. I don't claim to know what's going to happen there, but I think the sort of things that are continuing to evolve are audio and visual elements of AI. We see these new image generation tools coming out all the time. So I think probably what's going to happen next is we're going to see more and more instant translation. I mean, we already have this, but we're going to see the evolution of things like earpieces. And before long, you're going to be able to have a conversation with someone in a different language. They're going to be able to reply, and it's going to be instantly translated into your earpiece. Anything that you see anywhere, we're going to have glasses that are going to instantly translate things. So all of these things are going to happen. And for many people who just care about the interaction, or rather care about the outcome, it's going to be very useful in a purely utilitarian sense. For everyone else who actually gives a damn about language learning, it's going to be utterly soul-destroying. And so I think personally that we're going to see a lot of people checking out from all of this and just saying, what, this is just what I signed up for. This is not what I want. What I really want to be able to do is just sit down and read a book in Norwegian. I want to be able to sit down and have a long conversation with my mother-in-law in Italian. I want to be able to enjoy a glass of wine with my partner and speak in that language, and then watch a movie in that language, because it's the human experience that I care about. So, are we going to continue to see a lot of evolution? Yes. Are things going to change? Yes. Like with all things, I think we fundamentally as humans want the same thing. So as long as we hold on to that, we are going to be okay. So thanks for tuning into the podcast. I'll see you back in the next episode.